Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about our top 24 Dynasty tight end rankings with tiers.
Hike!
Well, for this rankings and tiers episode, I have a hunch that Joe and I are going to be quite different on this. We're going to have to get ready to buckle up here. Let's start off with tier number 1. What do you got there, Joe?
All right, Steve. In tier 1 at the number 1 spot, I've got Brock Bowers. Number 2, Trey McBride. And at number 3, Sam Laporta.
All right, so at number 1, I've got Brock Bowers, 2, Sam Laporta, and 3, Trey McBride. So, believe it or not, I said that we'd be different. I guess so far we haven't been that much different. I got to tell you, looking at these rankings with tiers, it was a no-brainer. I think probably for you too that Brock Bowers was number 1. But I honestly think it's kind of amazing in a way that, he went to the Raiders. We had talked about a lot of concern surrounding him going to the Raiders. Laporta was this darling after what happened last year. We didn't expect anybody to do something like Laporta did. Now, he didn't get as many touchdowns, Bowers, that is. But, man, he took the league by storm, and now he's shot up all the way to number 1.
Yeah, I know we were worried about the quarterback situation with the Raiders and everything like that, but it just simply didn't matter. They found a way to get him the ball. And honestly, another thing I wasn't sure just how creative they were going to get and if they were going to allow him to kind of, get into the slot and put him in those advantageous situations. They went ahead and did it and, led him to the great rookie season that he had.
It will be interesting, though, because Pete Carroll, I feel like, has not always done the best job of maximizing tight ends. So,
Yeah.
Bowers is definitely their best player. I would think they would scheme him open and to still utilize him. I'll be curious about it. Are you nervous about that at all?
I mean, I think it's more on the offensive coordinator than Pete Carroll. I mean, sure, Pete Carroll likes to play defense and run the ball a little bit more, but I still think the offensive coordinator would be silly. I mean, they don't have a ton of weapons on the offensive side of the ball in Las Vegas. They're going to have to figure out how to continue to utilize Brock Bowers in a favorable fashion, or else they would just be doing their team a disservice.
Well, Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator, which he has been back to the NFL since he was the Eagles coach. So very interesting how that's all going to play out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Chip Kelly should be able to find ways to utilize him and get him in those advantageous matchups and take advantage. I've got faith in that.
So what made you put McBride over Laporta? I was a little surprised by that because I know you're usually a part of the McBride fan club. Or sorry, not the McBride fan club, the Laporta fan club. But maybe you're in the McBride fan club now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the McBride fan club, and also the Laporta fan club as well. I was down on Laporta this year just simply because of the fact that I expected him to get that touchdown regression, which he did, because that was part of the reason why he was so good his rookie year with the 10 touchdowns. But yeah, I think just McBride, I think he's got possibly a better role in that Arizona Cardinal offense than, the Lions. They run the ball a lot. They use Jahmyr Gibbs in the pass game. Amon-Ra St. Brown's there. Deep shots to Jameson Williams. You saw him kind of take a little bit of a step back in that offense this past year. That's maybe where, I like McBride as he's a little more heavily utilized in Arizona.
I just don't know if he was all that healthy, though. I mean, if you look at, 2024 compared to 2023 as rookie year, he only had 83 targets compared to the 120. I know he said the touchdown regression, which he did have. But to my surprise, I mean, he had 10 touchdowns his rookie year. He had 7 touchdowns in his sophomore campaign. So it's only a 3 touchdown difference. He really was just he didn't get the volume.
Right. And that's where I think Trey McBride and especially talking about, PPR, if you're in a tight end premium, I think I think he's got a better chance to continue that volume.
Do you concern at all as far as the lack of touchdowns that he's had? He's only had 2, 3, and 1 in his career.
Yeah, sure. I think those could possibly come. That's the thing. I think he's got room to increase. Where I think it's gonna maybe it could be harder for Laporta to keep up these touchdown numbers, as that's a harder stat to predict.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. Well, let's head over to tier number 2. Who do you got there?
All right, in tier number 2, at 4, I've got George Kittle, 5, Mark Andrews, 6, TJ Hawkinson, 7, Tucker Kraft, and at number 8, I've got Travis Kelce.
Okay. At number 4, I've got TJ Hawkinson, 5, George Kittle, 6, David Njoku, 7, Dalton Kincaid, 8, Kyle Pitts, and 9, Mark Andrews. So I knew this is where there's going to be a fork on the road, and we've reached that fork. I think one of the things here's the thing. This player in particular, Mark Andrews, you obviously have him a lot higher than I do. Both have him in tier 2. We were wondering at the beginning of the year, is Mark Andrews like done? Because he just wasn't involved in the offense. Obviously, I remember even us talking about after week 1, we had told people to go out and get Isaiah Likely. And it just so happens later on in the year, Andrews kind of came back in the fold. Now, he did have that, I think it was a motorcycle accident or car accident, some sort of accident. So maybe it wasn't himself. But it kind of made me, it's interesting because we're looking at this, depending on when you thought of Mark Andrews, when you thought of him, if we did a Dynasty rankings early in the year, you might have plummeted him. Now, obviously, he kind of recovered. Do you have any concern based on the slow start that he had? Is this like a sign of things to come? Because for me, it was, and that's why I felt like I had to put him lower.
No, that's why I'm confident where I have him. I think it truly was an attribution to the accident that he had. He wasn't fully healthy to start the year. Then also, really in the start of the year too, they were, really double and triple teaming him, especially week 1. The Chiefs, like double tripled him, made sure that Mark Andrews wasn't going to beat him. That's honestly why Isaiah Likely had such a big game week 1. So I think a lot of that had to factor in, and I think you saw the true Mark Andrews and the utilization increase as the season went on. And then he went into that run too, where it just seemed like you could almost bank Mark Andrews at least scoring a touchdown for you.
Do you find it interesting that there are reports from Dan Graziano of ESPN that's saying that Mark Andrews could be a cap casualty for the Ravens? Does that change your mind? Because there's rumblings that they could save some money and then pass the baton to Isaiah Likely.
I mean, sure, that could happen. I don't think that will happen. I think they'll keep him.
So you don't buy the smoke there?
Not necessarily. I mean, a lot of reports come out around these times. Not everything is correct. I'd be pretty surprised if the Ravens did go ahead and release him, because, I mean, I think, Andrews is just a good all around player, and I think Isaiah Likely's got the talent, and he's an athletic guy. But I think they both help each other. I don't know if Isaiah Likely could, really just take the reins by himself.
Interesting. I mean, he had 11 touchdowns. It's kind of remarkable. I mean, towards the end. So, I mean, some people probably won't like how I have him here. I think touchdowns are not a sticky stat. A lot of what he was able to do at the end was because of all the touchdowns he had. So, to me, I've got guys who I think, Pitts, Kincaid, those guys I got ahead of them just based on pure potential. Like I understand maybe it's nonsensical for people out there. The guys there's just way too much potential. We're talking dynasty here. These guys are
Pitts' potential is going down though, Steve. I mean, come on. How many years can we say this guy's got potential before we just realize maybe he's just not as good as we all thought?
Tight ends take longer to develop. We saw it with David Njoku. It took years for him to develop. I just can't do it. I mean, the tight end landscape in general, it's pretty flat. There's not a lot of pizzazz here.
No, I know. Yeah, it's
so to me, it's like I don't know when I'll get off the train. I've definitely pushed them down. Both of them were in my tier 1. I dropped them a tier since the last time we did this. I'm going to keep taking the dart throw and hope I'm going to hit, because they've got the talent. There's a reason why they were first round picks. there's a reason why people had so much interest in them before. I can't give up on it. I mean, with Kincaid, Knox is still involved. I think more and more he'll become less involved. I think, there is that
I
everybody
don't see
eats
that
mentality. Why not?
because they like to run the ball and Kincaid can't block. Dawson Knox does, so he's automatically going to be on the field way more than
But
Kincaid and what
yeah, but they're
most
saying
fantasy
they want
managers would want.
Kincaid. They want Kincaid to get more muscle, though. They want him to strengthen up. If he does that, you might never know.
Yeah, but you can bulk up all you want, but that's only half the battle. You got to know how to block. He has no idea, and he gets pushed around. I mean, that's a technique thing, and so the Bills' offense is to run the ball, and then, like you said, spread the ball around. I don't know. Everybody eats. Not exactly the words you like to hear is in terms of fantasy.
I get it. I just look. It could be nonsensical, but to me, you've
Oh, I'm
got
sure
Mark and
people might think I'm crazy for not having, Kincaid, at least Kincaid in the top 10, anyways.
I mean, depends. Some people don't think they belong at all. I don't have them in the top 5. I just think that those two guys are players that have had uber potential, and I understand they maybe haven't capitalized on it. But at the tight end position, I'm looking at ceiling. I'm not looking at floor. We can get into these guys that have a putrid floor. If these guys don't do well in a given week, it's not going to hurt my team. But if they can ascend to the player that we think that they're going to be, that's what I'm going to look at. These other guys, they don't have the ceilings that these guys have, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, that is fair. I don't know. I've never been like that big of a Kincaid guy anyways, so I guess I don't necessarily see the ceiling that you do.
So, why Kraft? So you find Kraft has more potential than Pitts and Kincaid, or you feel that he has more promise?
I think he's going to be more reliable. He's actually on the field for both the run game and the pass game, and I think the Packers offense is going to something's going to have to give a little bit. They got a lot of young wide receivers, but they all struggled to kind of get open. Outside of Christian Watson, they don't have that deep threat to really take the top off the defense. So if they get somebody like that, I think it could really open up the middle of the field for somebody like Tucker Kraft or maybe even some of the short pass game. That's the thing. Like they have a lot of similar receivers that kind of really excel in the short, quick pass game, but need more people like a Christian Watson to really take the top off to think for that offense to really take the next level in terms of the passing game.
So let's head over to tier number 3. Who do you got there?
All right, in tier 3 at number 9, I've got Evan Ingram, 10, David Njoku, 11, Kyle Pitts, 12, Jake Ferguson, and 13, Dalton Kincaid.
All right, at 10, I've got Evan Ingram, 11, Jonnu Smith, 12, Dallas Goedert, 13, Cole Kmet, 14, Travis Kelce, and 15, Tucker Kraft. One of the guys I thought was the most challenging to do is Jonnu Smith, without a question. He obviously has been, decent player in his career. Obviously, he took a huge leap forward with Miami this past season. I think I told you I thought he could be more involved in the offense. You thought I was nuts. I didn't think he'd get that involved. Having 111 targets, 88 catches, 884 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He will be with Miami again next year. He's got one more year left on his contract. He's 29 years old. It's one of those things where it's like because the tight end landscape is so just nah. It makes me think like, where do you put a guy like Jonnu Smith? Because if he continues, I can't see why he wouldn't continue what he did last year at Miami. I mean, right? I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, he definitely could. I mean, I guess it's going to depend on what other receivers that they end up bringing in, and how or what other offensive weapons that they bring in. Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I didn't think Jonnu Smith was going to do what he did was just simply because the track record wasn't that Miami didn't really use the tight end position. But hey, they changed their offense up. After Tua came back and it was short, quicker passes, and man, he was really heavily involved and really seemed to excel. I guess I just my concern with putting him high, you're right. He was one of the trickier players just because he finished pretty high on on the season last year, and it's just how much do you take account into that 1 year versus what he's kind of done, and then being that he's still on the Dolphins for one more year. That's the other thing. It was like eventually only one more year of the Dolphins. Then what happens? We're talking dynasty, thinking a little bit more long term. That's kind of why I struggled to put him as high as you got him.
The thing is that 1 year was just so dominant, and that's where it's, especially in a tight end landscape that isn't so good. The other one that I had a tough time was with Kelsey. We don't know if Travis Kelsey's going to retire or not. He definitely took a step back as far as his stats go. So you had an 8. I have him farther down, but a part of my reason why is I think either A, he retires, or B, he becomes more phased out. Had we saw Rashi Rice the whole season, and you've got Xavier Worthy, I just don't know if Kelsey is the type of regular season contributor that he has been. I think they may preserve him for the playoff stretch. Chiefs are always in the thick of it. I don't know. I struggled with Kelsey on this one.
Yeah, I mean he finished as the tight end 5 in PPR.
That's very good.
And I mean, you're talking about a guy that wasn't that heavily utilized. I honestly think,
But that might be just more so. I mean, if you compare the stats, though, from what he did for the year prior.
well, sure. I mean, he's not. Yeah, he's not. The last couple of years, he hasn't been as Travis Kelsey like. But he has his games. So
Yeah,
I
I mean, if you look at
personally,
the stats, you're not. Yeah, I mean, it was actually. I mean, I could be wrong about that. It actually, I should say, it looks a little different.
yeah, I mean, I actually consider not even having him in the ranks just because I'm almost positive that he does retire. But in the event that he still plays, I did want to have him ranked where I think he
Really?
should
Why
be
are you
ranked.
positive?
Well, just listening to him talk about it on the New Heights podcast, it just doesn't seem like a guy that um maybe he just needs more time away and thinking about it. But in the moment when he's talking on the New Heights podcast, it just seemed like he honestly might just be done and didn't seem to be talking with that same fire and passion that we've seen out of him. So honestly, I'll be kind of surprised if he chooses to play this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was thinking the same way. I almost put Noah Gray in my top 24 because I kind of towards the back end because I thought, okay, he'll step right in. I think it's just tough. We don't know. This could very much change if he's actually. I would see myself moving him up. I think you made some good points. I think after looking into it further, I would definitely. But he probably plays one more year. That's also the problem. These other guys aren't going to play more than 1 year. And that's where it's tough. I think it's situational. If you're a win now team, yeah, you should have Kelsey. If you're developing, he's really no use for you.
Yeah, that's where I kind of just stayed with the idea of some of these older players. I'm ranking them as a dynasty asset value and somewhat, not always for the long haul.
So let's head over to tier number 4. Who do you got there?
All right, in tier 4 at 14, I've got Kate Otten, 15, Jonnu Smith, 16, Dallas Goddard, 17, Pratt Fryermuth, and at 18, Cole Kmet.
All right, at 16, I got Pat Fryermuth, 17, Jake Ferguson, 18, Isaiah Likely, and 19, Cade Otton. I feel like I owe Cade Otton an apology because I think the last time we talked about it, I was like, Cade Otton, like he's not even that good. Why are we even considering? Boy, was I wrong.
Yep.
When it was just him and they had to rely on him, he was reliable. So I was wrong about that. Apologize to you, Cade. I put you in here. Made sure I made a note of that. I do find it interesting how you've always been low on Goddard, and I don't really know why.
Because he's really not that heavily involved in the offense, and he's mostly involved when Devonta Smith isn't on the field, and it's just him and AJ Brown. And he doesn't. He was always a guy that relied on Yak. I just don't really see that Yak potential anymore. He's an aging tight end at this point. He's just the guy that doesn't excite me.
I mean, he is 30 years old. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I mean, and he doesn't seem to be that large, big part of the offense. I mean, He wasn't heavily involved in the playoffs, really the Super Bowl. So I just see that utilization kind of going down, and more so their run first with Saquon Barkley now, and the AJ Brown and Devonta Smith still get theirs, and that's about it.
Well, the tough part with him too is that he has never been able to play a 17-game season.
That
So
too.
that doesn't do him any favors. I just maybe I'm thinking about him. I think there's a lot of buzz usually surrounding him, probably
He's a
because of the
name.
yak ability, and he's a name.
Hmm.
And so I'm getting caught up in the name, and I don't think you are as much, which I give you credit for.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt when he is a healthy player, like he showed early in the season, like he was highly productive, but then it's just he got hurt, then coming back just never was really the same. But like you said, I mean, you can almost bank on him getting injured at some point, which really kind of hurts his fantasy value.
What about a guy like Cole Kmet? He's a guy who I ranked higher than you. And part of the reason why I liked him a lot was because I think Ben Johnson could unlock the offense. You saw how much Sam Laporta was relied upon.
Hmm.
And Kmet, he receives, I believe he received an extension, so he's going to be with the team for a little while. And, he's somewhat of an athletic guy. So I think he could really take a next step forward. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he was a tough one for me to rank. I mean, just because outside of that 1 year that he had, and they paid him, he's kind of just been an underutilized guy. And I mean, where I rank him is not because of his ability. To me, he's got a lot of talent, got a lot of athletic ability. Almost wish he'd be on another team, but frankly, where I have him was because of Ben Johnson being there. If Ben Johnson wasn't, I probably wouldn't even have him in my top 24.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so
You would
I
say
just
that, though? I mean, he was tight end 8 in 2023 and tight end 7 in 2022. I understand he was tight end 19. How would you not have him in top 24?
I just don't know what to make of the Bears offense, and I don't know if
Hmm.
Caleb Williams doesn't really seem to throw it to the tight end position. Um, maybe that does change with Ben Johnson coming over. He seems to like to throw it to the outside with Roma Dunze, DJ Moore. Do they bring in somebody to replace Keenan Allen? I don't know. We haven't seen it yet, so until I see it, I'll adjust.
Well, I did see that I thought I saw they're releasing Gerald Everett, which I think is good for Komet. Maybe he'll get more snap share. I don't know. I can't
Well, that
honestly.
was just I mean, that was just an offensive coordinator play, and
No, I know
one,
it was.
yeah. But then they released him in season, so
Do you think with Jake Ferguson at all, are you concerned with, the Cowboys never re-sign their tight ends? They've got Schoonmaker. Or is there a part of you that thinks it's going to be a Dalton Schultz situation with Ferguson?
it could be. But heck, I mean, Dalton Schultz has gone on to the Texans, and he's even been a little bit fantasy relevant as well. So I think,
Well, you and I both haven't ranked him yet.
yeah, I mean, I, I'll rank him later, but I like Jake Ferguson. He's shown, like, even before his injury, like he was doing pretty well. And then obviously, Dak going down also didn't help. So Jake Ferguson's still a guy that I like, and even if the Dallas Cowboys kind of do that thing that they like to do, I think he lands somewhere else, and it could be a productive player.
All right, let's round it out with tier number 5. What do you got there?
All right, in tier 5, 19 Isaiah Likely, 20 Theo Johnson, 21 Jatavion Sanders, 22 Chigakonkwo, 23 Dalton Schultz, and 24 Hunter Henry.
Okay, at number 20, I've got Hunter Henry, 21, Chika Conquo, 22, Theo Johnson, 23, Jatavion Sanders, and 24, Ben Sinnott. I will say it is interesting. We actually have a lot of similar players here in this final tier. I included Ben Sinnott. You didn't. Now, he did nothing this past season. Absolutely nothing. Now, Zach Ertz, I think he's a free agent. Will he be back? Will he not be back? You saw how much Jane Daniels relied on Ertz. Is that indicative of Sanat being a good player? Or could he possibly take over once Ertz is gone? I don't know. There was a lot of. I think he was a prospect you and I both liked. You wanted the Broncos to take him.
Mm-hmm.
I just think there's too much intrigue with him possibly being the starting tight end for the Commanders that I was like, this could very much change depending on what this is. We're doing this prior to free agency, prior to the draft. I mean, a lot of this stuff is subject to change. I wouldn't. Let me preface this. I don't know if I would necessarily tell you that I would make any earth-shattering moves prior to this stuff coming out. It really depends on your risk tolerance. For a guy like Ben Sinnott, do you want to reach out to the owner to be able to trade for Ben Sinnott because he did nothing in hopes that he will take over? I wouldn't blame you for doing it, and I think you could probably get him for a decent price. But I caution making any really aggressive moves without really knowing how free agency and the draft unfold, because that could change things drastically.
Yeah, it definitely could. Ben Sinnott, obviously you mentioned it. I mean, I really did like him. I still do like him. My concern would just be do the Commanders just go ahead and re-sign Zach Ertz because he was so good, and him and Jaden Daniels did happen to have that rapport. I mean, you've said that can take a little bit for tight ends to come along. So do you give Ben Sinnott just another year to kind of watch and learn from Zach Ertz and be that safety valve in case Ertz, an aging player, could get hurt again? But if he doesn't and Sinnott's truly the starter, you're not wrong. That could be interesting. But just seeing how much they did utilize the tight end. But then I was also wondering, is that just because it's a veteran player like Zach Ertz and he just knows how to get open, or is it the Commanders part of the offense is really those tight end routes that Sinnott could also take advantage of?
Which guy would you say in this tier do you think has the most potential to possibly move up a tier?
I mean, I know you kind of think I'm crazy, but I'm very interested in Theo Johnson and what he could possibly do for the Giants. If they get a capable quarterback and most likely they'll have a rookie quarterback in there. And I always say, young quarterback's best friend is that tight end position, and it's almost like a security blanket for him.
Interesting. I mean, he's a great blocker. So that's one thing going for him, is that he's a really good, so he'll stay on the field. And if you did look towards the end of the year, they did get him more involved. So obviously you see, I do have him ranked in here as well. I think I lean towards Chig being the most interesting, but at the same time, he kind of was hit or miss. So, depending on if Rudolph was quarterback or Levis was quarterback. So that makes me a little bit concerned. There's not a lot of talent on that offense, but he always has been an interesting guy. You and I both liked him.
Yeah, and then the other guy I think would be, Jatavion Sanders. I feel like, as Bryce Young kind of got that offense moving along towards the end of the year there, I could see him continuing to make strides. I mean, he's a, athletic guy, and I think he could really benefit in his second year here.
So that does it for this episode. Joe and I both provided each our top 24 Dynasty tight end rankings with tiers. I will say, get excited because this tight end group is going to be changing, I would say, pretty quickly because of this draft class. There's a lot of really interesting tight ends. Don't know how many of them will hit the first round, but I think there will be several that go in day one,
at least two,
or day two in the draft. You think two will go in the first round?
At least, yeah. I think
Loveland for sure.
Loveland and Warren, I think, will go in the first round for sure.
And even Fannin, possibly. Harold Fannin is getting a lot of buzz as well. But there's a good amount of tight ends that are very interesting. And honestly, it's nice. We need a little bit of a little jump start here. Get some more tight end talent in the pool. So that'll be nice. I think that could change things up here for this tiers list, especially after the draft.
Yeah, no doubt it will, for sure.
So that does it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.